Computer, where are we? His voice croaked faintly. He took a long drink from his hydration bulb and spoke again, voice still rough. Computer, location status. A synthetic voice intoned. At your programmed destination, of course. Knuckling his eyes, he rubbed away the grit of sleep, then looked out the viewport at the stars of the forge. Computer, cruise status, please. Again, his voice was gravel. One human, male, freshly woken, it responded. Not me, he growled. The rest of the crew. Sir, there are no crew aboard this vessel, apart from yourself. He snarled at the empty cockpit, slammed his fist into the armrest, and winced in unexpected pain. Cradling his aching hand to his chest, he was startled to see blue veins under translucent parchment skin. Noticing strands of long white hair spilling into his lap, his unfamiliar ancient hands fumbled at his face and tangled in the beard they found there. Hoarsely, he rasped, Computer, when are we? Hello, and welcome to The Bad Spot, an actual play podcast in which I, Matt Risby, and I alone am playing through Ironsworn Starforged. I hope you enjoyed that tale from the drift that opened up the episode. That piece was written by a mysterious contributor known only as Hagthorpe, and I'd like to extend a huge thank you to them for writing such a cool and atmospheric piece to open up the show. If you want to roll on the oracles and see what inspires you, then please get in touch via the details that are on the screen now. And whilst I have you, why don't you please leave a like, subscribe, and click the little bell icon so you can follow along the campaign every step of the way. So, last week we had Archer Barlow facing off against Blake Sutton, who has given him a fairly stiff deadline of 1 day to unlock the secrets of the Iron Gate. He has had to delve deep into his darkest memories, and Archer has managed to connect these faint recollections of the Professor's final moments with the symbol that he keeps seeing, and he combines them both to activate the Iron Gate in the compound that he has been imprisoned in. Now, we ended things with one final memory, which was the revelation that the Professor knowingly activated the Iron Gate they found all those years ago, and her final words of "find me" suggest that she knew exactly what she was doing and stepped willingly through the gates. Now, with all that in mind, and all that water under the bridge, I feel like it's time to mark some progress on our background vow. Remember, our background vow is to find the Professor and unlock the secret of the Iron Gates. And looking at the conditions for reaching milestones here, I think it's fair to say that we have both overcome a critical obstacle and gained meaningful insight here. So I'm going to say we're going to mark progress twice against this vow, meaning we have filled in one whole box of our background vow. Now, you might not think that seems like a lot, given that we've been playing for 14 sessions now, and you'd be totally right. I've been playing for more than 12 hours. This is absolutely pathetic. At this rate, Archer will probably fulfill this background vow at some point during the show's 9th season in 2026. So you've got that to look forward to. So yeah, stay tuned for that. So we're back in the present, and what are we doing? Archer has activated the gate, and he is now stood alone in this room. This metal shell of a room that has been built purposefully around the gate, whether to contain it, to protect it, who knows. Its bluey purple glow and low hum has given way to a blinding white light, and Archer stands in front of it. This source of immense power, of infinite potential. And he knows now that the Professor stepped willingly through this gate. And he knows that Blake Sutton and her clan needs the gate to find this super weapon. He's imprisoned here. He has been beaten up and broken down, both physically and emotionally. He is ill-equipped and just about as low can be. But he has got the iron gate open. This could be his escape. This could be his way out. But Luna is still out there. Griff is still out there. Where is Griff, actually? Last time we saw him, he was piloting the Eclipse as a distraction to throw off those bounty hunters. So Lord knows where that little idiot has gone. But he's out there somewhere. And I think that Archer stands in front of the gate and he's holding that last memory in his head. That memory of the professor telling him to find her. And there's that feeling of excitement that he's finally got a little bit of something to drive him on, something solid. But then also he remembers how it felt to be left totally alone, lost and abandoned. And that is the fate that he'd be leaving Luna to. He knows from Blake that Luna is still alive, but that's all we know. We don't know if she's been mistreated or whether she's being held or where she's being held or anything. We don't know anything. So I think that Archer considers stepping through the gate for a moment, for a split second. And he pauses at the threshold and he thinks about those connections he's made and how he just can't abandon that in service of his own desire to be anywhere else, to be somewhere safe. He's going to have to get Luna. But before we move on, there is something that has been bothering me, something that I've been thinking about since last week, and this happens a lot doing this show. I will roll something up or come up with something on the spot in the moment, and, it's cool to put in, but, I don't instantly think of the ramifications of it. And kind of afterwards, I'll be out kind of running or walking the dog or whatever, and it will just kind of pop into my head, and I'll be like, well, what does that mean? And this week, I have been bugged by something Blake said to Archer. And it's something about the fact that she needs him to activate the gate, but also why. She says something along the lines of, they know where the weapon is, but they need the gates to find it, something like that. And it's been kind of niggling at me about what that could mean. And I think that if Blake and her clan have the Iron Gate and don't know how to use it, we've established that. But I think they must also be in possession of something else. Because Blake said that Clan Thorn also knew of the location of the weapon. So what I think is that I think that Blake has a map. And it's a map of the Iron Gate network. And I think that's the ace up her sleeve. I think that's what she has. That's the edge that she has over Clan Thorn. And I think that Archer's probably figured out that this is the case. That without some kind of directions, the gates in and of themselves are useless. So she must have something that would lead her to the weapon. And this, I did just check back. I introduced Blake back in episode 6. This finally explains why she was described as a navigator. So maybe she's not out here as a military commander of her clan. She's just out here leading an expedition. She's a navigator tasked with finding a passage through the forge using the Iron Gates, specifically trying to find the super weapon. So that's a loose end tied up. Thanks for listening. Okay, so let's move on. Archer isn't going to go through the gate. We've established that. So what is he going to do? He is in this room by himself. There is an unknown number of guards on the other side of the door, and he has activated the gate. His options are pretty limited. If he tells Blake Sutton and shows her that he has done it, she'll just kill him, right? Like, he's not special. There's nothing inherent in him that means he can open the gate. She doesn't need him. He just has the knowledge. She would have no reason to keep him alive after he showed her how to use it. And she's made her intentions pretty clear. She didn't ask him nicely to figure it out. She kind of imprisoned him. She shackled him and blackmailed him and threatened him into doing it. So there's nothing to suggest, I don't think, there's nothing to suggest that Blake Sutton will show anything close to clemency whatsoever. Archer is completely disposable. He has no leverage. But he has opened the gate. Is there any way to use that to his advantage? Let's see. So I think Archer firstly powers down the gate. And I had this idea that the kind of weirdly, having turned it on using the symbol, he now kind of intuitively knows how to turn it off again. Like, he's made this strange connection with the cosmic energy that's powering the gate. I don't think that makes him special. I think anyone who activates the gate would probably feel the same connection, but I think that in some way he is now in tune with the energy that courses through it. So he powers it down, and the room once again pulses slowly with this dim blue-purple light. The hum returns, but now it no longer bothers Archer. He paces the room, and he's chewing over his options. He needs to get out, he needs to get to Luna, he knows that. He needs to try and free her, and he needs to try and contact Griff somehow so they can escape. And as they do, they need to discover and preferably steal whatever Blake has that details the Iron Gate network, whatever this is, whether it's a map, whether it's another databank, or what. Oh, okay. Had another idea. Let's retcon a little bit and say that maybe Archer realised that a map of a network of Iron Gates was obviously missing from the derelicts they discovered, that Griffin Institute derelict that was out there looking for Iron Gates. Now, obviously, the derelict had been undisturbed for decades, so maybe this piece of information had been removed a long time ago, and somehow Blake Sutton is in control of it, and that is how Archer has inferred that that's what she's got. So that is what she has, and that is what he's got to try and get hold of before they leave. So, not too much to ask for someone who, I shall remind you, is on 1 health, 1 spirit, 1 supply, and is unarmed, and even if they were armed, is terrible at fighting. So, let's try and think our way out of this. Let's try and come up with a plan. What would Archer Barlow do? Is that a snappy new catchphrase I've discovered? What would Archer Barlow do? Be more Barlow? Yeah, I like that better. Let's be more Barlow and think it through. We are going to hatch a plan to take out these guards and escape in classic jailbreak fashion. And I think my only real option here is to try and lure the guards in and take them out and escape. And what am I going to use to take them out, given that I am unarmed and am terrible at fighting? Well, I do have control over what appears to be a magic intergalactic portal. Is that anything? Who knows? But I think so. So the first thing I'm going to do here before I set this terrible plan into action is check my gear. And I hear you protesting that I am at 1 supply, so, checking my gear in the situation where I'm rolling plus supply is a terrible move. The odds aren't in my favour. Well, you would be correct. But thanks to my upgraded scavenger asset, I can roll plus wits rather than plus supply when I check my gear, which represents how resourceful Archer is, especially when the chips are down. And even though I've had everything threatening or anything that could remotely resemble a weapon taken out of my satchel, Archer kind of has a knack of having the right thing at the right time. And I accept that the last time I did try to do this move and use this ability, I did fall down a hole and nearly die. That is true. But this time I feel like it's going to be different. So, I'm looking for something specific in my kit. What am I looking for? I think I need something that is going to incapacitate at least one of the guards. I feel like if I can incapacitate one, I will have a much better chance of fighting the other one-on-one. So, what is that going to be? What could feasibly have been left in Archer's satchel that is innocuous enough that they thought it would be harmless? What could that be? I think they probably left some kind of sciencey looking stuff in his satchel, like some vials and whatnot. And I think that Archer reckons he could fashion some kind of chemical compound that could be in a small way like toxic or explosive or dangerous in some way if you, let's say, mixed it up and threw it in someone's face. Possibly. Does that sound like a bad enough idea? Like relying on GCSE chemistry and basic kind of tomfoolery? I like it. Let's go with that. Let's check our gear and we're going to roll plus wits thanks to my upgraded scavenger asset. So that is a strong hit. So on a strong hit, we have it and are ready to act and can take +1 momentum. And we also take an additional +1 momentum, thanks once again to our upgraded scavenger asset. So we bump up to a whopping 7 momentum. This could be key when it comes to having to kind of throw some hands at these guards. So 7 momentum. So let's envision it. Archer digs around in his satchel and he looks for medical supplies that he just desperately needs, but they've been removed. But what he does find is a small flat metal case that opens up like a book, and it reveals several kind of thin vials of clear liquids and also like some kind of metal strips and smaller dishes and pipettes and things. I don't know, some sciencey stuff. This is clearly like a little field lab for testing soil samples or whatever. And Archer is kind of hoping to see them all undamaged and full, and thankfully they are. And he kind of rolls his finger across the vials and spins them round in their cases and reveals the faded but still visible hazard symbols on the back sides. 2 of the vials. These are exactly what he was looking for. These 2 chemicals, when mixed and agitated, let's say, could be explosive and corrosive. He doesn't quite know, he's not a chemist, but he knows it could be bad. He removes the vials and holds them up to the dim blue light of the gate. And then he plants his staff into the dirt floor, and about halfway up the length, he kind of pushes this little button which pops out like a small like arm, like a little stick. It's about 2 inches long, I think. And it has these circular gaps in it, just about big enough to put a vial in. And Archer carefully combines the liquids from the vials together, and the clear fluid starts to congeal before his eyes. These kind of strands of green and yellow begin to blot the liquid as it begins to shift and transform. And he places the vial into the arm of the staff and presses the button again. And the arm begins to kind of spin or kind of like rock back and forwards quickly. It's like this little field centrifuge. It really is a cool stick he has. And he thinks that will kind of hasten the reaction that has already begun. And then he moves over to the door and he bangs on it. Guards, you need to get in here. And he steps back and stands in front of the gate, waiting for them to enter. And I'm going to fold all of this preparation into a move, and that move's going to be secure and advantage, because we're setting up an escape attempt here, aren't we? So we're trying to dupe the guards into entering so Archer can take them down. So this is definitely going to be using deception, so rolling plus shadow. Okay, that's our streak of strong hits broken, but we'll take a weak hit here. On a weak hit, it says I can either take +2 momentum or +1 on my next move. Okay, so that's... yeah, what's the best choice here? +2 momentum would very nearly max us out, which means that we could mitigate a truly awful dice roll by burning it. Or +1 on the next move gives us a little stimmy, a little boost on the roll. And we would still have 7 momentum to burn if we roll really badly. I think I'm going to take +1 on the next move. I don't want to think about crunching the numbers too much, but that's what I'm going to do. Because something tells me that my next move is going to be quite risky. So Archer waits for the guard to enter. His back is to the door, and he faces the gate. He hears the bolt on the other side slide across. He holds his hands up to the gate, exaggeratedly, almost kind of theatrically, performatively. And he says, "You really need to see this." And he hears 2 sets of footsteps crunching through the grey dirt on either side of him. He starts to make a circle with his hands, and the white lights start to dance around his fingers, sparking at his fingertips. He streaks the shapes into the air. And Archer feels attuned to this thing now, this ancient gate responding to his commands. He hears the footsteps stop. They're clearly watching him, and he turns to look as he continues to slowly draw out the symbol in front of him. There are 2 guards, both with rifles over their shoulders, both holding their stun batons in front of them, both gazing at the gate. They both wear the heavy woolen grey cloak of the clan, and their faces are completely obscured by masks, goggles, breathing apparatus, that whole chestnut. It's impossible to determine too much about their features because we can't really see them, but they both wear their hair short on one side and have the tattoo of a kraken running up the right hand side of their face. Archer can tell, just by their posture, that they are in awe of what is happening. And so he makes the gestures more exaggerated, paints the symbol bigger, drawing it out with his hands. They move closer, and as Archer finishes the symbol, the room is once again flooded with white light. And he says, "We need to alert Blake immediately. This is huge. But first, hold this." And he takes the vial from the centrifuge on the staff, and he forces it into the guard on his left's free hand. And they take it, still dumbstruck. And he moves to the other guard and says, "And you just stand here." And he kind of gently pulls them by the cloak, guides them in front of the other guard, standing them between them and the gate. And then Archer says to the first guard, "Oh, and just shake that." And he gestures to the vial. The guard looks at him, kind of confused, then back at the gate. And Archer motions with his hand for them to give it a shake. And kind of not really thinking, still in awe of the thing that's glowing. They do it. And this is where I'm going to roll. Because the outcome of this deeply, deeply, deeply stupid plan is by no means certain. So what'll it be? Face danger? Using deception or trickery? I think that's the move. That feels right. So this is going to be rolling plus shadow, and remember we have +1 from the secure and advantage. So let's roll this. A weak hit. Even with the +1, it is not quite enough to give us a strong hit, and our momentum isn't sufficient to change that result to a strong hit. So it says here, you succeed, but at a troublesome cost. Make a suffer move. Now, a suffer move is not something we really want to do, because whatever we choose to knock down is going to go to 0, and that's no good. But before we get into that, let's resolve the move first in the fiction, because we did succeed. And how does that look? Well, I think that the guard with the vial is stood shaking it, and the other guard is just looking at the gate, stood dumbstruck. The guard with the vial looks at Archer, and as they're shaking it kind of slowly, and Archer kind of motions for them to do it quicker. And they do, they're not really thinking, and as they do, Archer kind of steps away and motions as if he's kind of protecting himself from what's about to happen. And that's when the guard with the vial twigs that there's something up. And they go to throw the vial down to the ground. But before it has even left their hand, it explodes. And it explodes in a way that Archer had not anticipated, in that it explodes a lot. It's a big boy explosion. Maybe it needed a little less time in the centrifuge, maybe. Archer thinks as he's kind of sailing through the air backwards away from the blast. He can feel the force of the explosion fully in his chest, and that's when he realizes that maybe he overcooked it. The guard who was holding the vial has been sent flying in the opposite direction, and Archer can see them launched across the room through this kind of haze of yellowy green smoke, and it's this oddly serene slow motion scene, and Archer seems to be airborne for a long time, long enough to look over at the gate where he watches the other guard stumbling forwards into and through the gate, and then the flash that follows as they disappear brings everything back to normal speed. And at normal speed, Archer smashes into the wall. He takes the full impact on his back and then flips forward and hits the dirt face first. The wind has well and truly been knocked out of him, and he tries to use his arms to push himself up, but he is weak. He is real weak. His head is ringing, his vision is blurred, and looking back, he is some considerable distance away from the epicenter of the blast. That was a mighty punchy cocktail he cooked up. But that aside, he is in pain. Serious pain. And lots of it. And I think that this is going to be where we're having to make our suffer move. It doesn't make sense at all narratively to take a hit to our spirit or our supply, and it would be very disingenuous of me to take a hit to the momentum. So, the most obvious negative outcome of rigging an improvised explosive device that has a bit more pep to it than I expected is to reduce my health to 0. Archer Barlow has died. Thanks for listening, everyone. Goodbye. No, he's not dead. Archer's not dead. You can go to 0, but I can't remember exactly what happens. I think, yeah, you can definitely go down to 0. You definitely could in the original Ironsworn. I'm just going to have to look this up quite quickly. Okay, so if I move to 0 health, I must make the endure harm move. So we took -1 health, and it says here, if your health is 0 or you choose to resist, roll plus health or plus iron, whichever is higher. Now, regular viewers will know that I have voluntarily chosen to endure harm in the past, and it has gone terribly each and every time. And now I don't have a choice. This is not a great situation to be in. So, I guess we're going to have to make the move. So, let's endure harm. Before I do, can I burn momentum on a suffer move? Can I do that? I know you can't do it on a progress move, but can I do it on a suffer move? Does that sound right? Does that feel like cheating? That feels like cheating to me. Let me look it up quick. Okay, so I can't see anything to say that I can't do that, so let's bear that in mind. Okay, viewers at home, cross everything as we endure this harm on 0 health. That's a miss. And it's a miss where my momentum isn't going to help me. Okay, so what happens? Let's read on. On a miss, it's worse than you thought. Fantastic. Suffer an additional -1 health or lose -2 momentum. But if your health is 0, you must also mark wounded or permanently harmed, or roll on the table below. Okay, so wounded and permanently harmed are conditions, and they have a mechanical impact that you have to shake off before you can heal. And then there's this table. Should we have a look at this table? Okay, so there's a few options. Now, I'm no mathematician, but it seems like looking at these options, there's a 10% chance Archer will almost certainly die. A 40% chance he'll maybe die, but not right now. And 50% chance he'll be okay, but at 0 health. Am I reading that correctly? That's how it seems to work to me. So I can take a condition, or I can roll on this table, which involves leaving it up to fate and possibly dying. but then also possibly being fine. I'm kind of feeling like rolling on this table. Should I do that? I'm going to do it. Okay, here we go. Viewers, I am asking you once again to cross everything. 45. I am reeling and fighting to stay conscious. If you engage in any vigorous activity before taking a breather for a few minutes, roll on this table again before resolving the other move. Now, I see this as an absolute win. Archer is still trucking, but if he tries to do literally anything, he's going to have to roll again on a table, and I shall remind you, risk a 10% chance of dying. Ironsworn. Love it. So, Archer uses whatever strength he has to get to his knees, and it takes everything, all his effort. The other guard who got blown across the room is visible now, and they're not moving. The improvised explosive did its job. A little too well, but it did its job. Archer tries to stand, but his legs can't take the weight. Everything is hazy, so he has to inch his way across the room, grasping at handfuls of dirt to pull himself back towards the iron gate. He kneels in front of it, holding his hands out. He makes the gesture to power it down, and the room is once again blue. Exhausted by the effort, he drags himself over to his staff, which lays a few painful meters away from where it was dug into the dirt. He uses it to stand. His head's light, kind of swimming with the exertion. He needs help. He needs to get out. He needs to get to Luna. He needs to break her out of this place too. He doesn't know how he's going to do it or how he's even going to muster the strength to fight, but he needs to do something. This is his chance. He's still standing, and that's enough. He's still alive. He shuffles across the room to the guard laying motionless at the base of the wall. And he doesn't need to look twice to realise that the back of the guard's head took the full force of the blow as they slammed into the wall. And Archer reaches down and tries to tug the grey cloak from the crumpled body, and it takes a huge effort to do so, but he manages to kind of pull it loose. He's still leaning on his staff. He uses the other arm to wrap himself in the cloak the best he can. It's not a great disguise, but with his respirator on and his mask on, he could pass for a guard at a glance, and that could be enough, especially like if it's dark or at a distance. This will do. He can do this. The pain is shooting through his whole body, and it's excruciating. Every bone feels broken. Every muscle feels torn or strained. He's still standing, though, through willpower alone. He tries to hoist up one of the rifles from the floor, but it's just too much effort, and he abandons the idea and goes for the much smaller, lighter stun baton. He tries for it, and he manages to kind of get his fingers through the leather strap that's attached to the handle and get it off the ground, and that's something. He's standing, and he has a weapon. How well he can use it, debatable, but it's something. And now he has to get out of the room. The door is heavy anyway, but in this state, Archer has to kind of wedge himself like between the door and the frame to kind of force it open. And the effort sends him sprawling as he collapses onto the stone floor of the hall. The hall where he had his face-to-face with Blake Sutton. What felt like weeks ago, but was probably a few hours ago. It is empty, as much as he can tell. He can't see very well and kind of blinks to clear his eyes and focus. He gets to his knees, wheezing as he does. He uses his staff to get himself to his feet again, and one laboured, ragged step after another, he begins to cross the room. And he's not much more than halfway across the room when the door at the other end swings open. Archer strains to see. His goggles are streaked with mud, and his vision is also still fuzzy, and he can't quite make out anything except that it's a figure that's filling the doorframe. And it moves closer. And as it does, Archer starts to make out features. is no longer just a figure, but one cloaked in grey, holding a long rifle in both hands. The rifle pointing square at Archer's chest. And Archer stops moving. He steadies himself on his staff, and he raises the stun baton shakily in the direction of the clan guard. And he can barely keep his arm straight. He can barely even get it up to kind of head height. And it shakes in his hand. And he struggles with the weight. And he drops it. And he collapses to his knees. And his staff falls beside him. He kind of scrabbles round for the baton as the guard moves a step closer, the gun still trained on him. And Archer finds the handle, raises it once again, this time with both hands, thrusting it out, ready to make a desperate last stand. And the guard lowers their gun, pulls back their cloak, and even with his impaired vision, Archer can see the streaks of blue and green running through Luna's black hair. She pulls off her mask, and she gasps as she sees the condition he's in. Archer, I was coming for you. And I think she kind of cocks her head as if to say, really? And then she says, really? That's not really how this dynamic works. And she moves in and grabs him, pulling him to his feet, and she can feel he is dead weight. And she grabs his staff from the floor and kind of wedges it under his arm, kind of supporting him up, and she stands in front of him. She holds his face in her hands, and she says, we need to move. I can't carry you. I'll need you to do some of the work, okay? She's speaking real slow, real clear. Archer must look terrible, he thinks. And they move towards the door. Archer using the staff to support his weight on one side, with his arm thrown over Luna's shoulder, and she's picking up the slack on the other. And they move through the door, and Archer feels the hot sting of this volcanic planet's atmosphere on his skin for the first time in days. And he says, I'm a mess, kid. And Luna says, yeah, well, we got bigger problems. We do? Yeah, we do. And they stop outside the door of the hall. Before them, the fortress of Paxton Hold is all but deserted. There are no organised rows of cloaked troops, but only a few individuals remaining at their posts. Everyone else has evacuated the compound. The last of the hover bikes leaves noisily through the big, heavy double gate, following a convoy of war skiffs off across the ash-grey volcanic plains, leaving Archer and Luna with just the banners bearing the emblem of the Kraken fluttering in the wind. The sky has darkened, but not naturally. Archer strains his neck to look up. He grasps tighter onto Luna's shoulder as he sees what is hanging in the atmosphere in the sky above. A monstrous warship, Dreadnought class. Even from the planet's surface, they can see its black hull decorated with a knotted tangle of golden thorns. Thank you a million times. Thank you for watching. Please like this video, subscribe if you have not done so already, and click that little bell icon so you won't miss a single moment of this campaign. I will be back next week, but until then, it is farewell and safe passage.